Hello and happy Sunday and welcome to Colour and Stitch, where I'm going to be using thread a little bit like perhaps you might use colouring pencils. Now, for those of you who know, I do a lot of drawing on my own as well. So for instance, here's a few pages of one of my little sketchbooks. I did a little challenge. I challenged myself a couple of years ago to draw every day for a year. So these are some of the examples of some of my drawings that I did. And at the time I didn't really know how to translate any of this into stitching, and I guess I'm going to try and see if I can put this into a practical application. Knowing what I now know now, for instance, I might look at this and turn it into perhaps a buttonhole stitch. And things like, we've got this guy over here, could easily be running stitched on in different directions. So I'd like to take you guys along with me on that journey as I learn how to do this. In true Blue Peter style, I have actually prepared one earlier. I stitched this morning so that I could show you guys what I was doing. So I did this one in a circle. Now I haven't used any kind of particular embroidery thread. This is simply just a basic sewing thread that you might get for sewing your clothes. And I've used a circle. So I thought I'd do this one in a circle just to see. I usually work in squares. And to get my circular shape, I've actually drawn around the old humble needle grabber, but you could draw around anything that you've got perhaps that's round, for instance, like the bottom of a bobbin, for instance, a bobbin of thread. But as I was saying, I actually prefer to stitch in squares. I don't know why, but I do. I find it really effective for sampling, and for this one I have literally just drawn around a post-it note. Now the post-it note is 2 inches to give you an idea of the scale that this is. And I've used a friction pen, which I've talked about previously on my posts. They're really useful. It's just like a regular pen. And you basically draw, and then you use an iron, or in my case a hairdryer, to get rid of it. Now if we go back to the sample I was showing you just now, this one here, I did this morning. I really like the kind of teal colour. I wasn't too happy with some of the other colours. I think I tried about 5 or 6 different threads here. So I thought, but I also thought this was perhaps a little bit chaotic. So I've kind of come up with an idea of what I'm going to do. So I have pre-planned this a little bit in my head, but what I'm going to do for you this afternoon, I'm going to be using some different colours. So keeping in mind that teal that we mentioned, we're going to be using that in the mix, but we're also going to be using these gorgeous threads here. Now these are vintage threads that I've just picked up over the years. I wouldn't use them generally for like sewing clothes because they perhaps might snap, and I'm just playing here, so I really don't mind using them for my embroidery, but I particularly like the names of these two. This one's called Gladioli Red, and this one is Astral Gold. This one unfortunately doesn't have a name, but I think it's great. Just a fantastic colour, really bright and pops. But let's get started. I've already threaded up some needles. So I've got 2 needles threaded up there. I did have a third one, but it must have fallen on the floor. This is just a little magnetic needle holder that I actually got free in a knitting magazine, which is really handy. So it's good for keeping my needles on. And let's get started. So I'm going to start with the red thread. You have to forgive me, I'm always quite nervous doing videos, and you can probably hear that in my voice. They're quite new to me, and anyone who's worked beside me will know that I am not the chattiest stitcher in the world. I tend to actually stitch quite quietly when I'm working. I find it easier for my concentration. But here I'm just simply using straight stitches, so it's really easy. I'm using straight stitches, and I'm going to use those straight stitches to create some squares. You might be wondering, Ange, why are you stitching so slowly? And that's a couple of reasons. One is because I'm nervous, as I just mentioned. And the other is actually because I believe that embroidery shouldn't necessarily always be rushed. Obviously, in some contexts that might be necessary. But I think it's quite nice just to take your time and just enjoy whatever you're doing. Kind of like tune into the stitch, which sometimes means you might be tuning into your emotions, how you're feeling, what you're thinking about. Kind of allows your mind to drift off onto thoughts. You might end up thinking about what you're going to have for your dinner. But yeah, it can be quite meditative. But another reason I'm a little slower than I might perhaps normally be is when I'm stitching one-handed, or sometimes I stitched with two hands. I find that it's actually a lot quicker. But I'm still getting used to the camera setup, so I kind of have to sort of almost negotiate where my head would go, because my head would normally go where the camera is at the moment. So yeah, it's just about trial and error and making mistakes sometimes, as I did this afternoon. So some of you might be aware that this was meant to be a live. I did plan it as a live. I got super excited the other day because I hadn't had lives available to me until just this week. And I got a notification from Instagram to say that they were. And then unfortunately, having told you all, I've been super excited and organised everything, when I hit live at 3 o'clock today, I got a little notification for Instagram to say that they've changed their criteria for lives, and unfortunately at the moment I'm not eligible. So there's two criteria for eligibility. One is to have a public account, and the other is to have over 1,000 followers. And unfortunately, I don't have 1,000 followers, even though my account is public. I think at the moment I'm sitting at 916, and I'm not really usually bothered about numbers. I think they can sometimes get in the way and become more like vanity metrics, but obviously now I need to try and get to 1,000 followers because I'm quite determined to do lives. It would have been so lovely to be able to stitch with you guys this afternoon. I sometimes think it's quite nice just to keep each other company. Perhaps some of you might have come on and brought your own projects. You could have asked questions as well, and we could have interacted a little bit more. So yeah, so hopefully I can get to 1,000 followers quickly, because I'm quite determined to do lives. I just think they hold so many possibilities and so many opportunities, because I quite like to do stitch alongs going forward in the future, and obviously to do a stitch along, I think a live would be really good. So hopefully you can see kind of what I'm doing here. I'm doing the little straight stitches, sometimes they're back stitches. Trying to keep it simple. But I'm trying to imagine that my thread is just the same as using perhaps a colouring pencil or a felt tip. So effectively I'm stitching in colour. Now I planned my live to last about a half an hour, so I am going to stitch for a half an hour here with you today. We'll keep the video to that length. Yeah, and I am really sorry if you turned up for my live and I wasn't there. I haven't forgotten about you. I was having a gremlins in the Instagram moment. Yeah, like I said, I'm quite determined. I think where there's a will, there's a way. If any of you feel inspired to perhaps share some of my content onto your own social media, that would be great. It could be a great way of me, I guess, extending my reach. But no pressure. I am just going to keep producing useful content for you guys, and hopefully before long I will have enough followers to do those lives. The benefit of a live being that I can kind of stitch a little bit and then I can check and see if I have any questions or comments and can be answering those. So it's not just me stitching, it's a bit more interactive. So I'm actually just parking my thread at the side when I'm not using it. The back will be getting quite messy, but it's quite nice so you can have multiple needles on the go if you park your thread at the side. Well, actually, I'm not sure I want to use that colour. I want to use the red. Now, something else I wanted to mention to you guys is that this is sort of, I guess, part of the intention of doing this today as well is kind of a segue into a project that I'm going to be participating in starting week today actually, and it's called the 100-Day Project. It runs online and it's free to participate in. It's open to anyone who would class themselves as creative or anyone who just wants to be creative to participate in. And what you do is you commit to do something creative every day for 100 days and post about it on social media. I think typically it's on Instagram, but I'm not sure, perhaps it's on Facebook as well. But I've done it. I've participated for the past few years. The first year I didn't quite manage the 100 days. I found it quite difficult to kind of work out how to weave that into my working day. And then last year, having had the chance to participate the previous year, I had a little bit more idea of how to plan it out. And also I knew that I was going to be working away from home for most of the project, so I was actually able to pick something that was quite small and manageable, and I could do something that would take perhaps just even 5 minutes a day. But yes, so some of you may remember that last year I did buttonhole wheels, which were really pretty. I used to stitch in the morning for 5 minutes before work. I would stitch on my lunch breaks, which was quite nice because my colleagues got to see what I was doing. Also, I got to use it a little bit like a journal. So, I'm so sorry. I am hitting the camera with my glasses. But I used to use the stitching a little bit like a journal. So I can look back at that project now and remember some of the days I had, which is actually quite nice to be able to do that. But yeah, so the 100-day project, lots of people do it. It's not just for people who stitch, it's actually mainly, I think, people who paint and draw. But then there's people who do crochet as well, there's people who knit, there's all sorts of mediums. So it's a great way actually to be inspired what other people are doing. And even if you don't want to participate, it might be something you might want to follow along to. They do have a hashtag, so you can follow along or follow their account at the 100-day project. But I am going to be developing what I'm doing here actually. That end's getting quite short, so I'm just going to talk about what I'm doing. So I'm going to take that thread off to the side and I'll thread that through later. Yeah, what was I saying? I was talking about the 100-day projects, and I was saying that yeah, it's quite nice to sort of be inspired, and it's like a container really. You give yourself some parameters in which to create something, and it's a bit like, I guess, if you were writing every day, if you made that commitment to yourself, it's making that commitment to your creative practice. It becomes a container that you can grow in. And 100 days is actually quite a long time, so you might end up doing different projects. You might end up doing several projects. You might end up going, oh, I don't like what I'm doing, and you can start again. And I think there's no rights and there's no wrongs, but it's quite liberating anyway, so I would check it out. But I'm going to use this medium. I'm going to use stitch again this year, and my idea is that I kind of want to push the boundaries of stitch a little bit, or push my normal usage of stitch, which can be quite traditional and quite neat, and also often quite pretty. I'm just going to check. Yes, I'm just checking that you can actually still see what I'm doing. And yeah, I just want to colour and stitch, and so my idea is perhaps that I'm going to possibly use a little square like this, and I'm going to fill it in every day, and then pop it up on social media for you guys to see what I've got up to. I'm quite curious what will come out of it. I learned a lot last year, I have to say. I did learn a lot about myself, and about what I enjoyed. I think the connection part, I think connecting with others was really important for me last year. So all my threads are getting a little bit short, so I do apologise again. We'll have to thread up properly in a second. Yeah, so hopefully you're getting the idea of what I'm doing anyway, and hopefully you will follow along for the 100-day project, which starts next week. A bit about using your own imagination, really. There can be so many rules around embroidery when you're learning it, and I think perhaps, I'm not going to blame schooling, but I think perhaps it's our own kind of inner critics can pop up when we're trying to be creative. It's something that I notice in myself, and when I've taught people actually, is that sometimes we can get a little bit overcritical. And as I know, when I teach people, often people immediately tell me they can't draw, and I do believe that everyone can draw. I think we just suddenly start looking at our drawings and thinking they're terrible, but actually I think if you step away from them and come back, you might realise they're quite beautiful. or somebody else might look at your drawings and really appreciate it in a way you don't. And I know sometimes when I'm teaching, sometimes people they have this urge to rip their stitches out at some point during the class. It's inevitable. And I think I can relate to that, because when I first started to stitch, I think I had very similar experiences actually. It's kind of like that recovering perfectionist tendency that many of us have. And yeah, by the time you got a bit better at the stitch, you look back at your earlier stitches and think, my goodness, it's not good enough. But stitching is a bit like life. There's lots of metaphors for life in it. It's a bit like a journey, really. I think sometimes it's important to just kind of carry on and keep going. So you might think, oh my goodness, that looks awful. And you might be thinking that, but someone else might be looking at your work and thinking, no, that's really beautiful. Yeah, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, as they say. But also, I mean, even when I'm working sometimes, like this morning, when I was working on the piece I showed you earlier, which I'm just to help, I'm going to show you it again. So this is the piece that I was working on this morning, and about halfway through, my inner critic popped up, and I was like, ugh, I don't like it. But I think I've practiced this long enough to just be able to kind of calmly tell myself, and it's okay, just keep going. And yeah, and then I went downstairs and I showed my mum, and she was like, oh, it's really beautiful. So yeah, sometimes you just need a different pair of eyes to look at it. But yeah, again, it's a metaphor for life. Sometimes when you think things are a bit messy, just keep going. So yeah, there's that. And I'm wondering, I know none of you can answer this question because you are not live, but I'm wondering what the weather's doing where you are. We've had 2 glorious days of sunshine, and now it's raining again, so we are back to good old Scottish weather. Yeah, and I think I was asked about, I think almost 4 or 5 months ago, I was asked whether British people always talk about the weather, and I think it is a British cultural habit. I don't know if it's because we live on an island and we are so much at the mercy of the weather. But yeah, but anyway, I'm my brain's jumping around all over the place. But yeah, it's raining today and it's really grey, which is why I thought actually stitching in colour was just such a good idea for a rainy Sunday. This time of year it is quite grey. I don't think there's probably a few countries in the world where it's actually quite warm and sunny right now, but many of us are quite possibly experiencing a lot of grey. And so yeah, some stitching in colour is quite nice, just to give it a bit of life. So I think this sample is actually going to fill up quite quickly. The one I did this morning took me just over an hour to do. I think this is probably going to be quite similar. I'm not going to record all of the stitching. I'm I'd actually like to finish it. I'd really like to get the video up for you guys, so you can see what I got up to on my on the replay of my meant to be live. I'm sorry if I've let you down today, but like I said, gremlins in the system. I am not one to be determined, or deterred, sorry. I am determined, not one to be deterred. Quite stubborn actually, and persistent in most things that I do. Okay, so that's quite a lot of the red thread that we've had there. I'll just quickly thread up, I think, in the teal. Something that's quite useful to do as well is to kind of keep like a recipe book if you're doing sampling like this. So you might want to jot down the threads you're using, the names of them, perhaps like a little sample of them with sticky tape, and it can become, I call it a recipe book because that's what mine end up looking like. And in costume we are taught to map our work all the time, even if it's just like some basic notes, you know, really simple basic notes and thread samples, because you might have to repeat something and it's good to come back to a sample and know how you made it. But yeah, it's quite nice to keep them even for your own practice, because one, they become like perhaps something quite beautiful in and of themselves to look at, but also you can kind of jot down drawings, take notes. For instance, if I just very quickly show you mine, so it's got a little fox on it. That's one of mine anyway. I've just started it, and I've got some ideas, sort of where this idea developed from, I guess, and I drew out some stitches. That's very much this morning's stitch, and here I'm coming up, you know, I've written in pattern darning, as that's something I want to look into more. But yeah, I like to sort of think about it a bit like a child would try and catch butterflies in a net. And if you're like me, you're a child of the 80s, you probably had one of those neon nets that you'd run around in the garden trying to catch cabbage white butterflies. And I wasn't very good at that, but I have got quite practiced at catching my inspirations, my thoughts when it comes to stitching. So yeah, it is something I would encourage you do. I used to do it on bits of paper, but that wasn't very organised. And you'd kind of lose the bits of paper. Now I actually have, because I do have so many different stitch techniques I like to do, I do have a book for each technique. And if, for instance, I'm out and about, I might leave myself a voice note or a WhatsApp message, just any way I can write it down, and then I can revisit it later and add it to the irrelevant notebook. So that's a little tip. You want to try making your own recipe book or inspiration book for stitch. Okay, so we are coming really close to the half-an-hour mark, and I'm really keen just to get this video up for you guys in case anybody popped on. I'm disappointed to see that I wasn't live. So yeah, so I'm going to stop when it just about gets to past. But if you made it all the way to the end, thank you very, very much. Very, very long form video, and I'm sure the Instagram gods aren't going to like it. But I will put it up on YouTube as well. But yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for stitching with me this afternoon. And hopefully, perhaps you learned a little something, or perhaps you just enjoyed watching somebody stitch. Yeah, I'm wishing you the best with the rest of your day. I'm going to stop there for now. Wishing you the best for the rest of your day. And yeah, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate you so much, more than you can ever know. Okay, bye just now.